to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome, and thank you for joining Deep Sleep Stories. Tonight you'll drift into a gentle tale about a quiet riverboat bakery that glides along moonlit water, sharing warm bread, soft light, and peaceful dreams. Settle yourself in as comfortably as you can. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw unclench. Feel the surface beneath you, holding you without effort, like a calm hand steadying a small, trusting bird. Take a slow breath in and let it out. Another breath in, softer now, and release. As you breathe, imagine the air around you becoming kinder and quieter, as if the room is wrapped in a delicate blanket of dusk. Somewhere far away, a river moves with a patient hush. It doesn't rush, it doesn't worry. It simply flows, carrying silvery reflections and the faintest scent of cool water and moss. With every exhale, let the day slip farther from you, like a small boat untethering from a busy dock. You don't have to solve anything now. You don't have to hold anything up. You're allowed to rest, and as you rest, the river will do what rivers do, guide you onward gently into the story. In a town that loved quiet mornings and lamplight evenings, a river curved like a ribbon of dark glass. It passed under stone bridges and beside willow trees, whose branches trailed the water with slow, combing fingers. Along the riverbank, old bricks warmed in the sun, and at night they cooled beneath the stars, holding the day's heat like a secret. At the edge of the town was a modest landing where boats could tie up for a moment and where people sometimes stood simply to watch the water. The landing had a name painted on a weathered sign, letters softened by time. In the day the sign was ordinary. At night, when the mist drifted in and the lanterns were lit, the sign seemed to glow from within, as though remembering every evening it had ever seen. Most vessels that passed the landing were the usual sort: fishing skiffs, little rowboats, a barge now and then. But sometimes, on certain nights, when the air felt especially still, another boat arrived so quietly that even the river seemed to hold its breath. It was not large, it was not grand, it was simply dear. A riverboat with a rounded roof and wide windows, its paint the color of toasted cream, trimmed with deep, gentle blue. The boat carried lanterns along its sides like fireflies that had decided to settle there permanently. They swung with the boat's motion, casting tender halos over the water. And above the door, carved into a small wooden plaque, were the words that made passers-by blink as if they'd just woken from a pleasant dream. The Riverboat Bakery. No one remembered exactly when the bakery boat had first appeared. Some claimed it had been there for years, slipping in and out of town like a lullaby. Others insisted it came only in certain seasons, following the scent of blossoms or the first breath of frost, yet whenever it arrived it felt perfectly natural, like finding a warm cup of tea already waiting in your hands. On one such evening, when the sky was velvet and the moon hung low, the Riverboat Bakery drifted in with the ease of something that had nowhere to be but exactly where it was. Inside, the air was warm, not hot, never harsh. Warm in the way a wool blanket is warm. Warm in the way a kitchen is warm when someone has been baking for a while and the day's worries have begun to soften. The bakery's interior was small, but it opened in clever ways. Shelves curved along the walls like a hug. Jars of flour and sugar sat beside tins of cinnamon, cardamom, and vanilla. Bundles of dried herbs hung from hooks, swaying slightly with the boat's gentle sway. A narrow counter held a glass case where pastries rested like sleepy treasures. Crescent rolls dusted with sugar, golden buns glazed like morning light, and small cakes topped with sugared petals that looked like they'd fallen from a dream. At the heart of the boat was a compact oven, its door arched and dark, with an ember glow that seemed almost alive. Beside it, a kettle murmured softly, and the scent of butter and warm yeast drifted through everything, settling into corners and creases, soothing the mind without asking anything of it. The baker moved quietly from one task to the next. Her name was Marin, though she rarely said it aloud, not because it was secret, but because on the riverboat, names seemed to rest gently in the background, like labels on old jars. Useful when needed, but not demanding attention. Marin's hair was pinned in a loose knot, with a few soft strands escaping to brush her cheek. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbow, and a dusting of flour lived permanently along her forearms, as if the bakery had adopted her and marked her as family. Her eyes were the color of river stones, calm, knowing, patient. She loved the work, not in a dramatic way, not as a great declaration, but in the steady way one loves a quiet place. There was peace in measuring and mixing, comfort in kneading dough until it turned smooth beneath her hands. Kind of gentle magic in watching something plain become fragrant and golden with time and warmth. Outside, the riverboat settled at the landing. Rope was looped around a post. The boat made the smallest creak like a sleepy sigh. Marin lit an extra lantern near the door, and its light spilled outward, painting a soft path onto the dock. Not long after, the first visitor arrived. It was an older man who wore a coat that smelled faintly of cedar. He stepped aboard with slow care, as if the boat might be a shy creature. His face was lined with the kind of wrinkles that come from smiling at small things. Birds on windowsills, children laughing. The first bite of warm bread. He didn't speak right away. He simply stood, letting the warmth settle over him. His shoulders lowered, his breath deepened. Marin nodded to him in greeting, and that nod held everything that needed to be said. He moved to the glass case and studied the pastries as if reading a beloved story. Finally, he pointed to a small loaf, round and speckled with herbs. Marin wrapped it in paper the color of cream and tied it with a thin ribbon. When she handed it over, her fingers were warm, and the loaf was warmer still. The man cradled it against his chest for a moment, just feeling the heat through the paper, and then he left, as quietly as he'd come, carrying the scent of rosemary and comfort into the night. More visitors followed, one at a time, never crowding, never rushing. A woman with a basket chose airy rolls that smelled of orange. A pair of quiet friends shared a slice of honey cake at a small table near the window, speaking in whispers that mingled with the kettle's hush. The young courier, cheeks pink from the cool air, bought a simple bun and ate it slowly, as if each bite was an invitation to relax. And throughout it all, the river moved gently beneath the boat, rocking it in the smallest rhythms like breath. There were nights when Marin felt the river itself was listening, not in a way that demanded explanation, just a sense that the water understood the purpose of this floating bakery. The river carried many things: reflections, fallen leaves, moonlight, and sometimes the tiredness people didn't know how to put down. On the riverboat, tiredness was welcome. It was treated tenderly, like a guest who deserved a warm seat. Marin had learned over time that people arrived with more than coins in their pockets. They arrived with unsaid thoughts, with heavy shoulders, with minds still spinning from the day. Some were lonely, some were overfull with responsibility, some were simply worn thin like fabric rubbed soft by years of use. For each of them she baked something gentle, not as a cure, not as a dramatic transformation, just as a small kindness, offered the way a lantern offers light without insisting you stare at it. Sometimes the pastries seemed to carry something extra, something that could not be measured but could be felt, a sweetness that eased the mind, a warmth that loosened a knot inside the chest, a fragrance that reminded someone of a place they once felt safe. Marin never claimed to be a sorceress. She didn't speak of spells or charms. She simply listened to the river, to the oven, to the quiet needs behind people's eyes. On this particular evening, when the moonlight was thick as milk, a new visitor arrived, someone Marin had not seen before. He was young, though adulthood had already settled on him like a cloak. He stepped aboard the boat with a hesitant pause, and the lantern light caught his face in gentle pieces. Tired eyes, a mouth that seemed used to holding words back, and hands that were still, as if they had forgotten what it felt like to relax. He didn't look around much at first. He stood near the door, letting the warmth reach him in cautious waves. For a moment he seemed unsure whether he belonged in a place so calm. Marin did not hurry him. She wiped her hands on her apron and simply waited in quiet patience, as steady as the river. Eventually the young man walked toward the counter. His gaze drifted over the pastries, but he didn't truly see them at first. His mind was elsewhere, somewhere busy, somewhere loud. Evening, Marin said softly, the word gentle enough not to startle. He nodded. Evening. His voice was thin, like it had been used too much without enough rest. Marin watched him with quiet attention. "Something warm?" she asked, not as a question that required effort, but as an offering. He hesitated. "I don't know." "That's all right," she said. "You can just breathe for a moment. The boat doesn't mind." He blinked, as if no one had ever spoken to him that way. So simply, so kindly. His shoulders lifted with a small inhale, then lowered. Marin turned slightly, as though remembering something. "I have a roll that's still warm," she said, "with a little honey and sea salt. It's gentle." The young man swallowed, and something in his expression softened. "That sounds nice." Marin wrapped the roll and placed it on the counter. Then with a quiet thoughtfulness, she poured a cup of tea from the kettle, something pale and calming, with a scent like chamomile and drifting fields. She slid the cup beside the roll. "For you." He looked at it as if it might vanish. "I didn't ask for tea." "I know," Marin said, her tone steady. "It's still for you." He didn't argue. He simply picked up the cup, warming his hands on it, and took a careful sip. The tea was mild and soft, and it traveled down like a calming breath. He took a bite of the roll, and for a moment his eyes closed. It wasn't just the taste, though it was delicious. It was the warmth, the way honey and salt balanced like quiet music, the way the bread seemed to say without words, "You can stop holding so tightly." He sat at the small table near the window. Outside the river was a moving mirror. The town lights glowed on the far bank like scattered embers. Marin returned to her work, but she watched him now and then, the way one watches a candle flame to make sure it's steady. The young man ate slowly, as if relearning how to be present. When he finished, he sat for a while longer, hands around the empty cup, eyes resting on the water. The boat rocked gently beneath him. The lanterns whispered against their hooks. Everything invited stillness. After a time, he stood and approached the counter again. "Thank you," he said, and the words sounded more grounded than before. Marin nodded. "You're welcome." He lingered. "This place is strange." "In a good way." Marin's smile was small. "It's a riverboat. Rivers are strange. They go on, and yet they're always here." He considered that. "Do you travel?" "The boat does," Marin said. "I go with it." He nodded again, then glanced toward the window. "I've been walking for a while, trying to clear my head." "A busy head can be heavy," Marin murmured. He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "Yes." Marin reached beneath the counter and brought out a small paper bag. Inside was a handful of cookies, simple, round, lightly golden, with a faint shimmer of sugar. The scent was gentle, like vanilla and warmth. "For later," she said. He started to protest, then stopped. He took the bag carefully, as though it contained something fragile. "What do you put in them?" he asked, almost shyly. Marin's eyes held a quiet sparkle. "Time," she said, "and quiet, and a little river air." He almost smiled. That's not a recipe. It's enough, Marin replied. The young man thanked her again and stepped off the boat, returning to the dock with slower movements than when he had arrived. He walked along the riverbank, the bag of cookies tucked safely inside his coat, as if he were carrying a small lantern of comfort. Marin watched him go, and then she turned back to the oven where another batch of bread was rising. The dough swelled gently like a calm breath, becoming fuller. Night deepened. The Riverboat Bakery remained at the landing for a while, letting people come and go in their quiet way. But as the hour grew later, the visitors thinned, until only the hush remained. Marin began to tidy the shelves, wiping flour dust into neatness, rinsing cups, folding cloths. These were familiar rituals, the kind that told the body it was safe to slow down. Outside, the mist crept in and the river seemed to glow beneath it, a soft ribbon of light. The town's lamps grew fewer. Windows went dark one by one. When the last lantern on the dock flickered into a steadier flame, Marin stepped outside onto the boat's small deck. She inhaled the night air, cool and damp, smelling of water and distant leaves. She looked down at the river. Its surface moved in gentle patterns like a lullaby written in ripples. Marin had always felt that the river carried stories, not loud stories, not dramatic ones. Quiet stories, the kind that unfolded slowly, the way a pastry bakes slowly, becoming something tender. Sometimes, if she listened in the right way, she could sense those stories drifting past beneath the boat. Memories, wishes, small hopes, tired thoughts seeking rest. On nights like this, she would offer something to the river in return. She went back inside and opened a small tin, taking out a single pastry, a little braided bun, golden and soft, brushed with a hint of butter. She carried it outside again, held it over the water, and then set it gently on a small wooden tray near the edge of the deck. It was not meant to be eaten by anyone who walked on land. It was a quiet gift, like leaving a bowl of water out for a wandering animal. The riverboat rocked and the tray shifted slightly but did not fall. The bun sat there, steaming faintly in the cool air. Marin rested her hands on the railing, and in the hush of the night she imagined the river receiving the offering, not with hands, not with teeth, but with presence, with gratitude, with the simple exchange of peace. Then, as if answering, a soft movement rose near the deck, a swirl in the water that seemed to form a shape for only a moment. It wasn't frightening. It was gentle, like the surface of the river smiling. The mist thickened briefly, and for a heartbeat, the lantern light looked as though it was drifting through a dream. Marin blinked slowly. She did not gasp. She did not step back. She simply watched, calm and unafraid. The river had its own ways, and the bakery, floating upon it, was part of those ways now. When Marin returned inside, she felt the boat settle into a deeper quiet, as if satisfied. The oven's glow dimmed slightly. The kettle's murmur softened. She closed the curtains partway, leaving the windows still able to catch the moonlight. Then she moved to the small sleeping nook tucked behind a shelf. A cozy corner with a narrow bed, a quilt stitched with tiny blue waves, and a pillow that smelled faintly of lavender. Before lying down, she checked the ropes at the dock once more. Everything was secure. The boat would not drift away before morning, not unless it was meant to. She turned down the lanterns, leaving only one low light burning, a small amber glow like a firefly at rest. Marin lay down and pulled the quilt over herself. She listened to the river beneath her, the steady hush and sway, the soft creak of wood and rope. On the shore, the town slept. In the river, reflections drifted like slow thoughts. Above, the moon kept watch without effort. Somewhere along the riverbank, the young man walked on, his steps unhurried now. Perhaps he found a bench beneath a willow and sat for a while, letting the night air cool his mind. Perhaps he opened the bag of cookies and ate one slowly, feeling sweetness dissolve like a gentle promise. Perhaps, as the river moved beside him, he finally felt the tightness in his chest loosen just a little. And perhaps, later, when he returned home, he would sleep more deeply than he had in a long time, with the faint scent of vanilla and river air lingering in his memory. The Riverboat Bakery remained steady and warm, a quiet lantern on the water. It would be there for anyone who needed it, anyone carrying a tired day, anyone longing for softness, anyone ready to set their worries down for a while. And when morning came, it would be morning in the gentlest way. Pale light on the river, birds stirring in the reeds, the first warmth of bread rising once again. Now the story begins to drift like the river itself, slower, quieter, smoother. The lanterns on the boat are low, the windows are dim. The oven is only a faint ember like a sleepy star. The water beneath everything moves in calm, repeating rhythms, back and forth, in and out, like breathing. If thoughts come, they can float past like leaves on the surface. You don't have to chase them, you don't have to hold them, just rest. Imagine the river carrying you gently, not to a place you must reach, but into deeper comfort. Imagine the warm bakery air wrapping around you soft as a quilt. Imagine the hush of the boat and the hush of the night joining together, smoothing every sharp edge. Your body can grow heavier now. Your eyelids can soften. Your breathing can become slow and easy, like the river's patient flow. Everything is quiet. Everything is safe. And somewhere on the moonlit water, the Riverboat Bakery glides on, lanterns glowing, bread warm, the world kind and calm. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.